I want you to judge me, but only after you hear everything. My name is Clara and I'm 35 years old. I never thought I'd be capable of revenge until betrayal became my reality. For most of my life, I believed in the kind of love people write novels about. The kind that makes you feel safe, cherished, and certain of tomorrow. When I married my husband, I thought I had found that love. We built a home together, filled with laughter, quiet mornings, and whispered promises. I imagined our future as a straight path lined with joy, children, and growing old side by side. When I discovered I was pregnant, it felt like the universe had finally given me everything I had ever wanted. I would press his hand against my stomach and he would smile, whispering about the tiny heartbeat we couldn't yet hear. We talked about names, painted the nursery, and dreamed about who our child would become. Those were the moments I thought would last forever. But forever is fragile. It started with small things you could dismiss if you weren't paying attention. He grew quieter, distracted, his phone seemed glued to his hand, and when I asked, he brushed me off with a laugh. Work, he said, just work. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that the man I loved was still the man who loved me. Pregnancy changes you, not just your body, but your heart. You become vulnerable in ways you never imagined. Every sigh, every silence, every unanswered question feels heavier. I told myself I was imagining things, that hormones were twisting my thoughts, but deep down, I knew what my husband did, no one would believe. I remember one evening, sitting alone in the nursery. The walls were painted a soft shade of yellow, the crib already assembled, waiting. I stared at it and felt a chill. Something was wrong. Something was missing. And it wasn't just him, it was us. I tried to reach him, to pull him back into the life we had built. I cooked his favorite meals, left notes in his briefcase, reminded him of the dreams we shared. But the more I tried, the further he drifted. His eyes no longer lingered on me. His touch felt rehearsed, like an actor reading lines he no longer believed. I told myself it was stress. I told myself it was temporary, but the truth was darker and I could feel it pressing against the edges of my reality. There's a moment when love begins to rot, when the sweetness turns bitter. And you can taste the betrayal before you see it. I was standing on that edge, pretending not to notice the cracks forming beneath my feet. I want you to understand something. Revenge doesn't come from nowhere. It grows in silence, in the spaces between lies, in the shadows of broken promises. It waits, patient, until the day you can no longer ignore the truth. I didn't know it then, but my life was about to unravel. The woman who would destroy everything I thought I knew was already in the picture. She was already part of our story, though I hadn't yet seen her face. And when I finally did, I realized my husband hadn't just betrayed me. He had chosen her. And then, she entered our lives. There were signs, I ignored them. You won't. At first, everything seemed perfect. Our home was warm, filled with the kind of quiet happiness that makes you believe nothing could ever go wrong. I would wake up to the smell of coffee he brewed before leaving for work, and I'd smile at the little notes he sometimes left on the counter. We had routines, rituals, and dreams that felt unshakable. I thought pregnancy would be the final piece of our puzzle, the moment where love deepened into something eternal. I imagined us as a family, sitting around the dinner table, our child laughing between us. I pictured holidays, birthdays, and the kind of chaos that comes with raising a little one. He promised me all of it. He promised me forever. But promises can be fragile. It started with small cracks, the kind you don't notice until they spread. He began working late. Or at least that's what he said. His phone buzzed more often. And he'd step into another room to answer. When I asked, he smiled, kissed my forehead, and told me not to worry. It's just business, he said, but his eyes didn't match his words. Pregnancy made me more sensitive, more aware. I noticed the way his touch lingered less. The way his laughter felt forced. I noticed how he seemed distracted even when we were together. As if his mind was somewhere else. I told myself it was stress, that he was carrying the weight of responsibility for our growing family, but deep down, I felt the distance. One evening, I cooked his favorite meal, roasted chicken with herbs. The kind he used to devour with joy. He barely touched it. He pushed the food around his plate, smiled faintly, and said he wasn't hungry. I watched him and something inside me twisted. This wasn't the man I married. This wasn't the man who once looked at me like I was his entire world. I tried to dismiss it. I told myself love changes, that comfort replaces passion, that maybe I was expecting too much. But the silence between us grew louder. There were nights when he didn't come home until after midnight. I would sit in the nursery, staring at the crib, wondering where he was. I would call, and sometimes he wouldn't answer. When he did, his voice was clipped, impatient. "I'm busy," he'd say. "Don't wait up." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that the man I trusted was still mine. But trust is delicate, and once it begins to fray, every word feels like a lie. I remember lying in bed, listening to the sound of the clock ticking. He was beside me, but it felt like he was miles away. I turned to him, whispered, "Are you happy?" He didn't answer. He pretended to be asleep. That was when the doubt began to consume me. Pregnancy should have brought us closer. Instead, it revealed the truth. I thought about the vows we made, the promises we whispered in the dark. I thought about the life we had built, the dreams we had shared. And I wondered if I was the only one still holding on. There were signs, I ignored them. You won't, because what came next would shatter everything. And it all began with her. She wasn't just another woman, she was carrying our child. The first time I saw her, it was by accident. I had gone to the clinic for a routine checkup, expecting nothing more than the usual tests and reassurances, but when I walked into the waiting room, I froze. My husband was there, sitting beside a woman I had never seen before. He leaned close to her, whispering something that made her laugh softly. And then I noticed her stomach. Pregnant. My heart stopped. I approached them, my voice trembling. "Who is she?" He looked up, startled, as if caught in a lie he hadn't prepared for. "Clara, this is Emily." His words stumbled, his eyes darting away. She's helping us, I repeated, my voice sharp. He sighed, rubbed his temples, and finally said it. "She's the surrogate, she's carrying our child." The room tilted, my knees threatened to give way. "You never told me," I whispered. "I didn't want to stress you," he said quickly, reaching for my hand. "You've been through so much already. I thought it would be easier if..." "Easier?" My voice cracked. "You thought hiding this from me would be easier?" Emily shifted uncomfortably, her eyes downcast. She didn't speak, but her silence screamed louder than words. I turned to him, desperate for clarity. "Why her? Why now? Why without me?" He leaned back, his tone suddenly defensive. "Because you're too emotional. You wouldn't have understood. I made the decision for us." Gaslighting. That's what it was. He wanted me to believe I was irrational, incapable of handling the truth. But the truth was unbearable because it was betrayal dressed as sacrifice. I stared at Emily, at the curve of her belly, and felt a wave of nausea. "She's carrying our child," I said, more to myself than to him. "And you chose her over me." He shook his head quickly. "No, Clara, that's not what this is. You're twisting it. I love you. This is for us." But his eyes betrayed him. They lingered on her, softened when she shifted in her chair. I saw it, the affection, the connection. It wasn't just about the baby. Later that night, I confronted him again. The house was silent, the nursery door closed. I stood in the kitchen, my hands trembling. "Why didn't you tell me?" He poured himself a drink, his movement slow, deliberate. "Because you would have overreacted, and look, you are overreacted." My voice rose. "You made a decision about our child, our family, without me. You let another woman carry what should have been ours. And you didn't even think I deserved to know." He sipped his drink, calm, detached. "You're making this bigger than it is. She's just a surrogate. That's all." But I knew better. I remembered the way he looked at her, the way his voice softened when he spoke to her. I remembered the laughter they shared, the intimacy in their silence. She wasn't just a surrogate. She was the other woman. I pressed him, desperate for honesty. "Do you love her?" He slammed the glass down, the sound sharp. "Don't be ridiculous." But his anger was an answer in itself. Days passed, and the tension grew. He spent more time with her, claiming it was necessary, that she needed support. I watched him leave. Watched him return with excuses that felt rehearsed. "She's carrying our child," he would say, as if that justified everything. I tried to speak to Emily once, tried to understand. "Do you care about him?" I asked quietly. She hesitated, her eyes flickering with something I couldn't name. "I'm just here to help," she said. But her tone betrayed her. "Help doesn't make you blush when his name is mentioned. Help doesn't make you linger when he walks into the room." The betrayal was no longer hidden. It was alive, breathing, growing inside her. I began to see the truth in fragments. The late nights, the secret smiles, the way he defended her more than he defended me. He wasn't just protecting her because of the baby. He was protecting her because she mattered to him. And I mattered less. I thought pregnancy would bring us closer. Instead, it revealed the truth. He had chosen her, and in that moment, something inside me broke. The love I had clung to, the trust I had nurtured, shattered into pieces too sharp to hold. That was the moment I stopped being his wife and became his enemy. There are things I haven't told you yet. After I discovered the truth, nights became unbearable. Sleep slipped through my fingers, leaving me alone with thoughts that clawed at me until dawn. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of a house that no longer felt like home. Every creak, every shadow reminded me of betrayal. My husband slept soundly beside me as if guilt had never touched him while I drowned in bitterness. I replayed every moment in my mind, the laughter we once shared, the promises whispered in the dark, the vows spoken with trembling voices. They felt like lies now, rehearsed lines in a play I hadn't realized I was part of. And the cruelest part? He didn't even see me unraveling. Or maybe he did, and he simply didn't care. I began to withdraw. Conversations turned into silence, meals into rituals of avoidance. I stopped asking where he was going, stopped pretending to believe his excuses. But inside, I was screaming. Inside, I was breaking. Would you forgive him? Or would you do what I did? I want you to think about that. Imagine the person you trusted most, the person you built your life around, choosing someone else while you carried the weight of their betrayal. Imagine watching them protect her, defend her, cherish her while you stood invisible. Could you forgive, or would you let the darkness in? The bitterness grew roots inside me. It spread, twisting through every thought, every breath. I stopped recognizing myself. The woman who once believed in love was gone. In her place stood someone colder, sharper, someone who no longer cared about forgiveness. I remember sitting in the nursery one night, the soft yellow walls glowing faintly in the moonlight. I stared at the crib, at the empty space where our child would one day sleep. And I felt nothing but rage. Rage at him, rage at her, rage at myself for believing in a dream that had already died. That was when revenge began to whisper. It didn't come all at once. It was slow, patient, like a seed buried deep in the soil. At first, it was just a thought, a fleeting image of him suffering the way I suffered. But the thought grew, fed by sleepless nights and unanswered questions. It became a plan. Though I didn't yet know its shape, I started watching him differently. Every word, every glance, every lie became fuel. I studied him, studied her, studied the cracks in their story. I became an observer, detached, cold. And the more I watched, the more I realized how fragile they were. He thought he was clever, hiding his betrayal behind excuses. She thought she was safe, protected by the child she carried. But they underestimated me. They underestimated what betrayal can do to a woman who has lost everything. There are things I haven't told you yet. Things about the nights I spent writing down possibilities, the mornings I woke with new ideas. The afternoons I rehearsed conversations in my head. Revenge isn't loud, it's quiet, it waits. I want you to understand something. Revenge isn't born from hatred alone, it's born from love. Twisted into something unrecognizable, it's born from promises broken so deeply they leave scars that never heal. And once it takes root, it doesn't let go. I stopped crying, I stopped begging, I stopped hoping. Instead, I began to plan, but not what you think. I started planning, but not what you think. Revenge isn't loud, it's quiet, patient. It doesn't announce itself with fury or chaos. It waits in silence, weaving itself into the cracks of betrayal, feeding on every lie, every stolen glance, every whispered secret. That's how it began for me, not with rage, but with calculation. I knew exactly how to make them suffer, but not in the way they expected. At first, I didn't know what form my revenge would take. I only knew it had to be something that cut deeper than words, something that would leave scars they couldn't hide. I wanted them to feel the weight of what they had done, to taste the bitterness they had forced on me. But revenge isn't built in a single night. It's constructed piece by piece, like a puzzle only I could see. I started small. I watched them, every interaction, every conversation. Every moment they thought was private. I studied it. He thought he was clever, sneaking away to check on her. She thought she was innocent, just a surrogate fulfilling her role, but I saw the way his hand lingered on her shoulder, the way her eyes softened when he spoke. They weren't just connected by the child she carried. They were bound by something more. One evening, I confronted him. "You spend more time with her than with me," I said, my voice steady. He sighed, annoyed. "She needs support. She's carrying our baby. Don't make this about you, about me," I repeated, my tone sharp. "It is about me. It's about us. Or have you forgotten that?" He shook his head, dismissive. "You're being dramatic, gaslighting again." He wanted me to believe I was irrational, that my pain was nothing more than hysteria. But I wasn't hysterical. I was observant, and I was planning. I began to plant seeds, subtle questions, quiet doubts. I asked him things I already knew the answers to, just to watch him squirm. "Where were you last night? Why didn't you answer my call? Why does she always need you?" His lies grew weaker, his excuses thinner. And with each falter, I grew stronger. I spoke to Emily once more, carefully. "Do you trust him?" I asked. She hesitated, her lips parting as if to speak, then closing again. "He's kind," she said finally. But her eyes betrayed her. "Kindness doesn't make you blush. Kindness doesn't make you avoid the wife of the man you're carrying a child for." I smiled faintly, masking the storm inside me. "I hope he's kind enough to stay loyal," I whispered. Her silence was the answer I needed. I started writing things down, not a diary, but a ledger. Every lie, every absence, every betrayal. I documented it all, not for memory, but for strategy. Revenge requires precision. It requires patience. I knew exactly how to make them suffer, but not in the way they expected. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to fight. I wanted them to unravel, slowly, painfully, until they couldn't tell where the lies ended and the truth began. So I began to manipulate the silence. I stopped asking questions. I stopped confronting him. Instead, I let him believe I was broken, defeated. He grew careless, thinking I had surrendered. He let his guard down. And that was when I began to strike. I dropped hints in conversations, subtle enough to unsettle him. Funny how secrets always come out, I'd say casually. Or, it's strange how people think they can hide forever. He would stiffen, glance at me nervously, then laugh it off. But I saw the fear flicker in his eyes. With Emily, I was softer. I approached her with kindness, feigned understanding. It must be hard, I said gently. Carrying a child that isn't yours, being so close to someone else's family, she nodded, grateful for my sympathy. But beneath my words, I was planting doubt. Do you ever wonder if he'll still be there when it's over? I asked once. Her face paled. I was building cracks in their foundation, one word at a time. There were nights when I would sit alone, rehearsing conversations in my head. I imagined the moment they would realize the trap I had set, the moment their perfect little secret would collapse. I imagined their faces, the shock, the fear. And I smiled. Would you forgive him? Or would you do what I did? I want you to think about that. Because forgiveness is easy. Revenge is art. I knew exactly how to make them suffer, but not in the way they expected. The plan wasn't about violence. It wasn't about destruction. It was about exposure. About making them face the truth they thought they could bury. About turning their lies into chains that would drag them down. I stopped being his wife. I stopped being her victim. I became something else entirely. And as I stood in the nursery one night, staring at the crib, I whispered to myself, it's time. That was the moment I was poised to strike. When the truth finally came out, no one was prepared. I had spent weeks weaving my plan in silence, letting them believe I was broken, defeated. He thought my silence meant surrender. She thought my kindness meant acceptance. But silence is a weapon and kindness can be a mask. I was patient, deliberate, waiting for the moment when their lies would collapse under the weight of truth. It began with whispers. I let small truths slip into conversations. Carefully chosen words that unsettled him. Secrets have a way of surfacing, I said one evening. My tone casual, he stiffened. His fork pausing midair. Emily glanced at him, her eyes questioning. I smiled. As if nothing had been said, but the seed was planted. I started leaving traces, subtle, undeniable. A message left on his desk, unsigned, she knows. A call to Emily, my voice calm but sharp. Do you really think he'll stay with you when this is over? I didn't need to say more. The silence that followed was enough. The cracks widened. He grew restless, snapping at me over trivial things, pacing the house at night. Emily became distant, her laughter fading, her eyes clouded with doubt. They were unraveling. And I was the one pulling the threads. One evening, I confronted him directly. Do you love her? I asked. My voice steady, he slammed his fist against the table. Stop this, Clara, you're imagining things. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on his. Am I? Or are you terrified that she'll find out the truth about you? His face paled. He opened his mouth, but no words came. That was the moment I knew I had him. The fallout began slowly, then all at once. Emily confronted him, her voice trembling. She called me. She said you wouldn't stay. Is that true? He stammered, tried to deny it, but his lies were brittle. She saw through them, the trust between them shattered. And I watched as the bond they thought was unbreakable dissolved into suspicion and fear. I didn't stop there. I revealed pieces of his betrayal to those closest to us, friends, family, colleagues, not everything, just enough to taint his reputation, to make them question his integrity. He's not the man you think he is, I whispered, and they believed me. Because the cracks were already visible, he tried to fight back, tried to paint me as unstable, irrational. But the more he spoke, the more desperate he sounded. His confidence crumbled and people began to see him for what he truly was. Emily withdrew, isolating herself. She stopped answering his calls, stopped meeting him in secret. The child she carried became a symbol of betrayal, not hope, and he was left alone. Abandoned by the woman he had chosen over me. I remained calm through it all, my voice steady, my actions deliberate. While their world collapsed, I stood in the center untouched. That was the contrast, my calm against their chaos, my silence against their screams. Would you forgive him? Or would you do what I did? I want you to think about that. Because forgiveness might have spared him. But revenge ensured he would never forget. The day the truth finally came out, it was brutal. Emily confronted him in public, her voice breaking, her accusations sharp. You lied to me, you lied to her, you lied to everyone. He tried to defend himself. But the crowd watched, silent, judging. His mask was gone. I stood nearby, watching. My heart steady. This was the moment I had waited for. The moment when his lies collapsed, when his betrayal was exposed. No one was prepared. And yet, this wasn't the end. Because revenge doesn't end with exposure, it lingers, it festers, it leaves scars that never heal. He lost her, he lost me, he lost the respect of everyone around him. But the true punishment was knowing that he had destroyed himself. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to fight. I simply let the truth speak, and it was louder than any weapon. That was the execution of my plan, calm, deliberate, devastating, and as I watched him crumble, I whispered to myself, this is only the beginning. Revenge doesn't heal. Its scars. And scars don't fade, no matter how much time passes. They stay, etched into your skin, into your memory, into the very fabric of who you are. I thought exposing him, unraveling their lies, watching their world collapse would bring me peace. But peace never came. What came instead was silence, heavy, suffocating silence that reminded me of everything I had lost. He was broken, his reputation shattered, his lies exposed, his surrogate gone. Emily disappeared from his life, retreating into the shadows of shame and regret. He tried to reach out to me, tried to explain, tried to beg, but his words were hollow, his voice trembling with desperation. I listened once, just once, and then I walked away because forgiveness was never an option. Do you think I went too far? I want you to answer that honestly. I want you to imagine standing where I stood, carrying the weight of betrayal so heavy it crushed the person you used to be. Would you forgive? Or would you let the darkness take hold the way I did? I don't regret what I did, but I don't celebrate it either. Revenge isn't victory. It's survival. It's the only way I could reclaim myself when everything else had been stolen. There were nights after the fallout when I sat alone in the nursery, staring at the crib. The soft yellow walls no longer felt warm, they felt cold, empty, mocking. I would trace my fingers along the wooden bars and wonder what kind of life my child would inherit. Would they grow up knowing the truth? Would they see me as strong or as cruel? That question haunts me still. He tried to rebuild, but every attempt crumbled. Friends turned away, colleagues whispered behind his back, family judged him in silence. He became a shadow of the man he once was, and I watched from a distance, detached. I didn't need to intervene anymore. His destruction was complete. But revenge doesn't heal, it scars, and scars tell stories, and mine isn't finished. I carry bitterness inside me like a flame that refuses to die. Some days it burns quietly, hidden beneath the surface, other days it roars, reminding me of everything I endured. I wonder if I'll ever be free of it. If I'll ever stop replaying the betrayal in my mind. Would you forgive him? Or would you do what I did? I ask you again because I want you to feel the weight of that choice. I want you to understand that revenge isn't about justice. It's about survival. It's about reclaiming power when you've been stripped of it. He lost everything. She lost everything. And I lost the woman I used to be. Sometimes I wonder if revenge was worth it. Sometimes I wonder if forgiveness would have been easier. But then I remember the lies, the betrayal, the way he looked at her instead of me. And I know forgiveness was never possible. Revenge doesn't heal. Its scars. But scars tell stories, and mine isn't finished. Because even now, even after everything, I feel the darkness lingering. I feel the bitterness waiting. And I know that my story isn't over. That was the aftermath. That was the consequence. That was the price of betrayal. And as I sit here, telling you my story, I leave you with this. Do you think I went too far? Or do you think I did exactly what needed to be done? The choice is yours. The judgment is yours. But my scars, they are mine. And they will never fade.